So how do you prime the pump, right? Because so this is all in the way that you frame it, or in the way that you see a case, and you take that case on, and the breath you breathe into this case. Like, how do you get yourself sort of pumped for trial and focused? Like, what's your, I think a lot of lawyers, young lawyers, would be interested to know sort of your style and how you get ready for trial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the most important thing is the first conversation that you have with your client every time, whether it was in criminal or here in civil, because what kind of primes you for trial is your relationship with your client. Absolutely. Because you have to know your client's story. And when you know your client's story and you feel their story and you feel their pain and you understand their life, everything else falls in line. Everything else is easy to come by, I think. But to really be able to encapsulate somebody's experience into a closing statement, or to effectively persuade a jury in, Broward County, or you might be in Marion County. You can't do that unless you truly understand your client. And your client won't really give you the opportunity to do that to your fullest unless they trust you.
Right.
And so those first conversations, and it's one of the biggest lessons that I took from the public defender's office, was client trust. It's everything. And for me, at least, kind of transitioning into the wrongful death, personal injury world, it's very difficult to kind of convey your client's story and the pain and the history and the family and the trauma, unless you really can understand them, unless you can go up to their house, sit down with them, talk with them, see the room that their son, used to sleep in, see the artwork that their son used to create, look at the bed as it was the morning that he left the house, never to come back, and until they let you into that room, you can't get that. And if you can't get that, you can't communicate that. And so that's, and it not just helps you tell their story, but it motivates you and it energizes you, because it's not a case, right? It's a family. It's a friend. It's a person that you talk to every day. It's a text message that you get every week, and it's just, in my opinion, at least, it's the most vital part of prepping yourself for the trial is that first conversation.
Interesting. Yeah. So obviously you don't have one case, you have many cases. And you have to have these really, like, you have to be focused and making sure that first impression is good, that you connect with your client. And you have to do that for all these cases that you're working on. Do you take work with you at home after, you leave your office? I mean, because some of these cases, are sad cases, and, you kind of live in that energy until the cases typically resolve. And so how do you process your work, whether it's, during the week, or like, how do you make sure you can take a break emotionally, so to speak?
It's tough work to take an emotional break from. And my clients don't get an emotional break. Our clients don't get an emotional break. I think most recently about Thanksgiving and Christmas. And as soon as I woke up in the morning, the first thing that I thought about was particularly the moms on my wrongful death cases, whose daughters and sons are not there, and what they're going through and what they're feeling. And I text them, I call them. It's impossible for me, at least, to not bring it home with me, because it's not a job. It's not a job. It's not a 9 to 5. The work that we do is, our clients' lives have been changed for the worst already by the time that they come and meet us.
Right.
And you in a lot of ways, you kind of you take on some of what they're experiencing, and or at least I feel very responsible for making sure that justice is done for them, for their family, and for their, for that legacy. There is probably incredibly well adapted attorney out there who walks in the door of their house and, you know, kind of metaphorically drops everything and is cleansed and, you know, doesn't think about it the rest of the night. But I have not met that attorney. And I don't know that that attorney, I think that one of the reasons we do what we do is because we can't really let it go, you know, and I think that that's one of the reasons that makes us who we are as plaintiffs attorneys, and especially at the Haggard Law Firm, at least with the guys that I work with. I mean, you can't let that go. How can you forget? And how can you, you know, really create that space? So I don't know if I've answered that question because I don't have the answer to that.
No, I mean, a lot of the lawyers that I meet, they become, I mean, good lawyers I meet, right? That I'm always like drawn to, wow, you got this verdict and tell me about the story. And they tell the story of the client and how close they were to the client. And it was just personal, right? But I always, you know, I'm sort of always trying to observe and understand the personalities that are in the space that obviously always rise to the occasion and how they kind of strike life, you know, work balance. Cause that's an important piece, right? Cause you know, you're serving, right? And it's great that you're serving, but there is also a component of self-preservation in the process of, you know, serving. And I think that comes with self-care and family care and all of this other stuff. So it's there is no clear answer. I haven't gotten a clear answer on that, but I'm always curious to know how people think about it or, you know, contemplate it.
Yeah, so I can speak to that because I do think that one thing is, you know, I've surrounded myself with people in my life who understand what I do and how strongly I believe in the work that I do and how hard that I work at it, and who very delicately, you know, try to break me away sometimes. And, you know, it's, I moved to Miami from Boston, and I moved here with one of my best friends who also worked at the public defender's office. And she and I had interned together in DC and a bunch of overlaps in terms of the criminal justice world. And she's doing amazing work and kind of policy stuff now. But we both moved to Miami together and have kind of created this community and family down here. And so I have these people in my life that constantly are like, hey, what are you doing? It's 10 o'clock. I'm like, oh, you know, I'm doing this. They're like, okay, well, you know, there's this new series on Netflix. I don't know if you know what Netflix is. You know, it's on the TV, which is like probably that big thing on your wall that you haven't turned on in 3 weeks. But click the remote, that little thing on your couch, and why don't you sit down, you know, watch something. But, you know, it's and I think that's the best way that I can answer it is I have the people in my life that kind of insert themselves when they know that I need it. Because it is difficult for me to draw that line. And I don't always strike that balance naturally, you know, and I don't know that I ever will, but I hope to continue to surround myself with people that will force it upon me, and I will, and I know I will graciously accept. So.